Magandang araw mga katropa. Ngayon, isang bagong araw na naman ang pagkipaglaban sa buhay. Tara, samahan niyo akong bomba dito sa hagdan at tayo papasok na naman. Ganito nga pala kadumi ang aming hagdan. Dahil kami mga magkakapit bahay, kanya-kanyang buhay. Busy lahat sa pagtatrabaho, kaya ngayon, tayo papasok na naman. Tuwa ng lagi na lang tayong absent. Ito nga pala ang aming harapan. Diyan. Dito sa gilid, yan naman kami nagpaparada ng mga motor. Pero dahil ngayong umaga ay malamig, kaya tayo magsasasakyan. Ayun, saktong-sakto ang ating pagbaba dahil saktong tawiran. Tayo muna itatawid at baka tayo masagasaan. Pero mga kabayan, iba hindi dito sa Taiwan. Uwanang pag ikaw ay tatawid dito, ay ikaw ay iingatan. Pag malapit ka na, ay kahihintuan. Hindi kagaya diyan sa atin sa Pilipinas. Pag hindi ka bubusinahan, ay kaisasagasaan. Ayan, yan nga pala, yung bagong gawang tawiran. Yan ang tawiran ng mga naka-wheelchair para hindi sila mahirapan. Dito nga pala sa padiretsyong ito, dito ako napaparking dun sa may bandang dulo. Tayo muna yung maglalakad. Tayo mahuli na talaga. Nakikita niyo ba yung puting iyan? Iyay, hindi ay. Iyay doon sa nagtatrabaho diyan sa palapit na kampanay. Eh siya ating bis-bilisan at malayo pang ating parkain. Dulo pa ay talaga tayo mahuhulay. Ay sa wakas, tayo narito na rin malapit na. Natatanaw ko na. Yung kinayaan yan na ating munting sasakyan. Yan ay kalabas lang galing sa talyer ginawa. Ika lang at ito'y papasaw. Yan. Ay siya, try pumasok na at nang hindi tayo mahulay. Yun nga palang nakikita ninyong green doon ha. Ay doon yung aming bahay. Pero hindi yung buong building. Kamalay na umupahan doon. Yan, yun sa building na yan. Parang sa video pagkaganda. Sa personal naman sa doon ay pagkatubyaw. Sa wakas, doon na. Kaya makakaliko na ng pahanan. Di pagkaganda naman pala talaga ng building neto sa video. Magandang kulay. Hayaan tayo nakalikunan ng pahanan. Dini siya bandang aray. Dini nagmumula ang traffic hanggang Doon sa may bandang dulo, dugtong-dugtong na iyan. Mesiya, tayo muna ay bumiyahe. Panoodin niya nila ang trapay. Tayo muna ay makinig na story habang tayo ay bumabiyahe hanggang tayo marating sa hampanay. Akinosuke was a simple farmer who worked hard in the fields outside his village in Japan. One afternoon, a rain shower drove him and the other farmers to abandon their work for a few hours. Laughing, they ran beneath the wide boughs of a giant cedar tree in search of shelter. Once they were safe and dry, Akinosuke and the others decided to make the most of the situation and take an early lunch. As raindrops pattered gently on the canopy above their heads, they ate and drank and allowed themselves to fall into the kind of drifting small talk that comes so easily for old friends. While Akinosuke was enjoying his food, a small butterfly fluttered in from the rain and landed on his knee. He was about to swat it away, but an old farmer stopped him. The butterfly is a symbol of the human soul, the old farmer explained. When people sleep, their souls travel the world as butterflies, creating dreams. It was a curious suggestion, Akinosuke thought. He wasn't sure he believed it, but he left the butterfly alone. A few minutes later, he looked back down and saw it had already flown away. Soon, Akinosuke's stomach was full of warm soup and sticky rice, and he was feeling very content. Leaning his head against the trunk of the giant cedar, he felt his mind begin to drift, carried along by the soft murmur of the friendly conversation nearby. In no time at all, he was fast asleep. After a short while, he found himself coming back to wakefulness. He thought about how nice it was to sleep beneath a tree and awaken to the fresh scent of cedar wafting in the breeze. But as Akinosuke lay against the soft bark, he realized something was different. He could no longer hear his friends talking and laughing. He opened his eyes and found he was now sitting alone among the thick roots of the massive cedar. There was no one else nearby. The only sound was the dripping of rain falling from leaf to leaf. Akinosuke assumed his friends had merely returned to work, leaving him to wake up from his nap in his own time. But he couldn't see them anywhere. The rain was now accompanied by a light fog that made it hard to see far into the distance. With every moment that passed, the fog seemed to be growing thicker. Akinosuke peered into it. From the place where the fog was most dense, he could just make out some human figures walking towards him. It appeared to be a large group. As they drew closer, it became clear that these were not his friends from earlier in the day. for farmers had never worn such luxurious silks, or used golden hairpins, or walked on such ornately designed sandals. It did not take much guessing for Akinosuke to realize that he was in the presence of a royal procession. He scrambled to his feet and bent at the waist in a deep bow. The leader of the royal procession was an older man with twinkling eyes. He approached and told Akinosuke to rise. The bow was not necessary, the old man said, for they had been sent by the queen of the realm to find him. They had come to ask for his help in a matter of utmost importance. Akinosuke's utmost importance. Akinosuke straightened himself upright and took in the full majesty of the group. Each person wore robes of red and gold silk that rustled gently in the light breeze. Each had hair that was raven black and done up in a variety of intricate styles. The air around them was scented with the finest perfumes Akinosuke had ever smelled. With every breath, his nose was filled with the complex aroma. He could make out spices like cinnamon, cloves, and cardamom. Sweet flowers like hibiscus, lilac, and jasmine. And citrus fruits like orange and pomegranate. It almost seemed as if the heavenly aroma followed the procession like a cloud, alerting everyone around to the presence of royalty. Akinosuke had no idea what such an auspicious group would need from him. They must be mistaken, he said, as he was nothing but a simple farmer. But if they had come this far to find him, then he would be honored to provide them with whatever he could. The old man smiled warmly and said he was certain Akinosuke was the person they were looking for. The queen had asked for him specifically. The procession beckoned to him. Akinosuke was surprised by this, but he found the group impossible to resist, as they were so certain they'd found the right person. And so, he joined them. Before leaving, they gave him a moment of privacy so he could dress in the blue and silver robes that they'd brought for him. They were the traditional outfit for a guest of the queen. After donning the clothes, Akinosuke admitted to himself that if the procession was, in fact, mistaken, the person they'd confused him with must be very similar. After all, the clothes fit perfectly, as if they'd been made just for him. The procession then began its journey back to the queen, with an awestruck Akinosuke in tow. As they walked, he marveled at the quality of the silk robes he'd been given. The material was so light and soft that he was sure it would offer little protection against the fog and rain. Yet, it kept him as warm as a thick cotton tunic. The sandals were also quite comfortable. To Akinosuke, it felt like walking on a cloud. He must have been distracted by all of the luxuries surrounding him, because before he knew it, he and the royal procession were standing in front of a massive palace. Guards in red and gold armor opened the gates, and they walked inside. The Queen's chambers were filled with beautiful treasures, unlike anything Akinosuke could ever have imagined. Wall tapestries of the softest fabric hung around the room, illuminating important moments in the kingdom. Ay siya, mamaya na natin yung pagpatuloy. Tayo malapit na dito sa kampana. Pangalan pala namin kampana Pata. Pero yun hindi pata ng baboy. Muna ipapasok at mamaya na lang tayo ulit kalasin kung magkita-kita. Siya, muna ipaparada at magiging. Baka tayo mahulay. Pero mukhang tayo pangatlo naman yata. Pangatlo sa maga. Ay siya, kung may papasok, mamaya ko na lang ulit kayo sa amang pag-uwian. O alas 5. Siya, ako muna ipaparada na. Kini sa aking pwestuhan, ako muna ipababanat ng makapag-aing. Ngayon, tapos na akong 8 hours. Panasin ko na naman uwian na. Kaya umuwi na, makapagpahinga. Makinig na lang ulit tayo ng story habang tayo mabiyahe hanggang tayo makauwi doon sa parandahan. History. Every inch of the floor was covered in fluffy rugs, or furs, or gorgeous bamboo mats of the highest quality. Above his head, the ceiling of the chamber was dotted with delicate glass windows. Akinosuke imagined laying on his back on one of the rugs at dusk, watching as the stars began to shine through the windows, one by one. The Queen wore robes of the purest, most beautiful cream-colored fabric Akinosuke had ever seen. His own silks shone as they reflected the light from lanterns hung around the chamber. But the Queen's robes seemed to emit a light all of their own. They were embroidered with crimson threads, illustrating a clutch of small, round, lychee fruits. The luscious designs were so true to life that Akinosuke found his mouth watering at the sight of them. Then, the Queen began to speak. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of her authority. Even though she barely spoke above a whisper, the people in the silent chamber could hear her every word. She explained that they had been watching Akinosuke for some time and found his farming skills beyond reproach. He was exactly the sort of person she needed to help revitalize a particular part of her domain. A small island with rich soil and hard-working citizens that had fallen on hard times. The Queen said the entire realm would be grateful if Akinosuke could take over as governor. Not knowing what else to do, he accepted the offer graciously. The queen smiled. She had made the right choice. Akinosuke spent the next few days at the palace, preparing for his journey to the island, which was situated in the middle of a wide river. He was still shocked by his good fortune, but there was so much work to do, he barely had a moment to think about it. Finally, it was time to leave. Akinosuke was accompanied to the island by several advisors. They traveled across what felt like all of Japan, over hills and green fields, through great cities and small villages. The final leg of their journey involved crossing the wide river, which they did aboard a beautiful wooden ship with billowing sails, the same creamy white as the queen's robes. On board the ship, Akinosuke allowed his mind to rest. He stood at the bow and closed his eyes. He felt the soft warmth of the sun on the backs of his hands. The fresh air flowed through his hair, making the loose strands dance lightly across his face. Birds called to each other over the gentle lapping of the current against the ship. The serene rocking made Akinosuke think of his hammock back home, and the way it would swing in the warm summer breeze. Soon, the island came into view, and the boat maneuvered toward the dock. As soon as Akinosuke stepped onto the land, he knew the queen had been telling the truth about the fertile soil. The earth beneath his feet was springy and moist. Tall, lush grasses covered every square inch of the island, and beautiful trees towered over the territory, providing cool shade from the sun. The advisors led him to the governor's estate, where he would live and work during his stay. As they walked toward the house, the advisors apologized for how small it must seem compared to the queen's palace. But Akinosuke, who had never lived anywhere larger than his family home on the farm, couldn't believe his eyes. The estate was smaller than the queen's, it was true, but it featured many rooms filled with luxurious comforts, like overstuffed chairs, soft rugs, and a large feather bed. Akinosuke knew he would be very happy here, and he was right. At first, he was a little overwhelmed by his responsibilities. But over the course of his first year on the island, he was able to learn about the people and their lives. Together, they collaborated to produce the first great harvest in over a decade. To celebrate, Akinosuke hosted a grand feast for every single one of his citizens. In this way, time passed by. He spent the next 15 years as governor of the island, slowly helping to turn it into a paradise for all its people. The woods, which grew wild, were tamed and carefully pruned into orchards that produced the sweetest plums, cherries, and pears in all of Japan. The farms, once neglected, now made more rice and grain annually than the island could consume in a decade. Akinosuke made sure to send the extra food back across the river, so the bounty could be shared with the entire kingdom. As governor, Akinosuke was beloved by the citizens of the island. He settled disputes with care and good humor. He planned wonderful feasts for births, marriages, and other happy occasions. And he even found time to work in the fields, doing the thing he'd always been best at: farming. Then, one day, the Queen sent a messenger to the island. One of her attendants arrived by boat to speak to Akinosuke and told him that it was time to return to the place where he belonged. The Queen would never forget his contribution to the island, the attendant said, and neither would the citizens. Akinosuke was saddened by the news, as this place had become a second home to him. But that evening, his advisors surprised him with a most excellent party. The food, drink, and dancing were better than anything he had yet experienced on the island. When the feast had finally settled down, and Akinosuke had said goodbye to the last of the partygoers, he made his way to his bedroom and lay on the huge feather bed. Slowly, he sank into the mattress, feeling it engulf him in a warm hug. He felt himself begin to drift from wakefulness into sleep. But before he did, Akinosuke took one last look up at the ceiling. When he'd first arrived on the island, he'd had one important renovation made in his bedchambers: the addition of small, delicate windows on the ceiling, so he could watch the stars come out, one by one. Looking up at them now, he saw them twinkle in the sky above. And within a few minutes, Akinosuke was asleep. Ay sa wakas nakauwi din pagkatapos ng 8 oras na paglabang. Ay mag-ayos lang tayo ng parada at nang tayo makauwi na. So, balog din ang inyong kuya. Ay siya, maraming salamat sa inyong pananood. Hanggang sa muli nating pagkikita. Paalam!